Yo guys, what's going on? My name is HackingIsFreedom and welcome to the 34th episode of What Was Cut, a series where we would take a look at what exactly was cut from our favorite games. Today we're going to be talking about Deadly Premonition. This is an older game that I only remember because of my parents. They really enjoyed this game and played it a lot when I was younger. It's definitely a really cool game, but if you never played it before, the gameplay reminds me a lot of Resident Evil. Anywho, let's get to the bottom of this case and figure out what was cut. Textures, as you know, are up first, and there's actually quite a few placeholder textures that we're going to go over first. This first texture says Batsu, which when translated roughly means death, but when translating the image it says rejected, so I'm not really sure which is correct. If we go with rejected, this was probably used as a placeholder texture to indicate art that's not final. And if we go with death, perhaps this was used on early corpse models. This next one is labeled as OGE, but when translating the text it roughly says program, so this may have been used as a placeholder for a TV screen in-game. This texture can be found in the HUD data, but when translating it roughly says buzzing. I'm not really sure where this could have been used. This texture when translated says photograph test, quite obviously intended for the trading cards you see throughout the game. These next ones are placeholder textures for various in-game paintings. The first one says sunset, this one says shadow, one that says elder, another that says youth, and this last one says baby. This next texture can be found in a file strangely labeled as zzz.pkg, and the texture itself is labeled as Ishiyama, so we can likely assume that this is Gen Ishiyama, a programmer at Access Games. There's a texture representing a pack of smoke simply labeled as Yang that I believe is a leftover from the game's earlier development, when it was still known as Rainy Woods. The protagonist was known as David Young in earlier stages of development, so that's my best guess. His FBI badge and ID textures are also still left in the files. It's actually pretty cool to see a good amount of textures left over from Rainy Woods still present in the game files. Older textures for the El Bureau graveyard also exist, showing it was once called Rainy Woods Cemetery. Lastly, it seems the developers redesigned the A&G Diner logo at some point in development. I'm not really sure why, as I think the original design looked much better. Next, we're going to go over the various cut items and weapons. First up, we have some interesting weapons, like a baseball bat with some HUD text and its textures, a hammer with its HUD text and textures as well, a weapon that's labeled as a hatchet, but it most definitely looks like a straight razor, a hoe, which only has an icon and text, and lastly, we have a switchblade, simply labeled as a small knife. Only this icon and text remains. Sadly, none of these weapons have any models anymore. Next, we have two different versions of cigarettes. Only the heavy cigarettes are available in the final game, but these leftover textures suggest that two more were planned. Deadly Premonition 2 had different smokes, so I'm guessing they had the same plans for these ones. In the second game, different smokes passed the in-game time at different speeds. I'm guessing this effect didn't work well enough, so they just scrapped it and waited till the second game. There's two unused note items using a temp icon that says Harry 1 and Harry 2. I sadly don't know where these would have been used. I can't really make out the first one, but if you're interested, the second one says, "Do not lose your passion. If you do, the sun and the moon will not shine on you. The hardworking have their own place." Finally, we have textures and a HUD icon for an item labeled as a sedative. Once again, it's unknown where this would have been used, but we can guess it most likely would have been a stronger version of the stabilizer healing item. However, you can just visit Yusha at the hospital for a stronger dose of this healing item anyway, so that sequence probably replaced this item. Up next are the changes done to various characters. Starting with the main protagonist, York. This is how he looked in Rainy Woods, and you can see that not too many changes were done, other than his face and hairstyle. In this concept art, you can see the developers were planning on an older version of York as well. Strangely, this older version has blue eyes, while the younger version has a standard green. Maybe the devs were just unsure of what color to go with. This is what George Woodman looked like in Rainy Woods. He pretty much got a complete redesign. It seems like he was much younger, had blue eyes, different facial hair, blonde hair, and a completely different uniform. Here's Emily Wyatt's design from Rainy Woods. She didn't really change that much. Besides some remodeling done to her nose, her hairstyle was slightly changed, and her eye color was changed from blue to green. She also has some concept art of her in a red dress, a summer dress, and some sleepwear. I don't think the summer dress outfit appears in-game, but I might be wrong on that. Thomas McClane pretty much looks exactly the same from the Rainy Woods development, although his concept art makes him look a lot older. Forrest Kaysen only has some concept art left, and he really doesn't look that much different, besides lacking his glasses. To me, his face looks a lot like Bill Clinton in this drawing. There's also some art of him in a military outfit that I don't think ever appears in-game. Lastly, Becky Ames has some concept art, although the design doesn't seem to be any different from how she appears in-game. It's time for the music and voice lines. Surprisingly, we don't have any sound effects to cover this time around. So let's go over the music first, as there's only two tracks that go unused. This first one is a different version of the song called Ride of the Valkyries. This other music track was heard in a Rainy Woods trailer, which was actually replaced by a song called Miss Stiletto Heels in the final game's trailer.
Passing to the other side of the door that nobody knows. I've been singing a song.
On to the voice lines, and first up we have a voice line from York telling the player what happens in the previous episode. Interestingly, this voice line still uses the old name of the game.
Previously on Rainy Woods.
Another cut line from York talking about the Ramones.
Joey in 2000, Dee Dee in 2002, and Johnny in 2004.
And this last line from York was possibly cut because it was too disturbing, but it's a short line describing the fate of a victim.
Becky was hung up in her bathroom with wires. The wires were rigged to tear out her insides when the wires were cut. The cause of death was most likely shock from loss of blood.
A few lines were cut from the Ingram twins from an earlier point in development, when they were still portrayed as small adults instead of angelic children.
Are you thirsty? You only take milk with your coffee. After your throat is quenched, you must do what you must do. You're waiting here for someone, aren't you? You'll also be able to return back soon. Red tree. 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 Red tree.
Lastly, we have a few voice lines from what I believe is York's father calling out to Gee-ter.
Okay, Zee-ter? Zee-ter. 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 Henning. Zee-ter. Henning. Zee-ter. Henning. David. 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 Zee-ter. Henning.
As we come to the end of the video, it's time for the oddities I found throughout the game. Remember that zzz.pkg file I said had this photo in it? Well, it's also got 3 more strange ones. The first is simply labeled as title, and it seems to be concept art of a building. The second is this strange and kinda creepy image. It's labeled as bonus 2, and I'm guessing this may be a screenshot of an earlier FMV trailer, or at least a cutscene, because nothing even close to this art style is seen anywhere in-game. The final image is this one, labeled as test image, and it seems to show a super early version of the inventory screen. These 2 textures here aren't unused, but they're extremely hard to see in-game by normal means. However, both name tags for Fiona and Yusha actually have the old name of the game still on the texture. The developers either forgot about this, or they just didn't care because it's so hard to see to begin with. Rainy Woods is also still featured on Emily and Thomas's badge textures. Again, the developers either just forgot about it, or just didn't bother to change it. Lastly, the game had quite a few changes done to its title screen over the various releases. This is the original title screen, back when it was still being developed as Rainy Woods. It then moved on to this, which is the final game's design, which also looks completely different from the Japanese release. Then later down the line, the director's cut changed up the logo slightly, and then when Origins was released, the logo was changed slightly once again. And that's all I have for Deadly Premonition. This was actually supposed to be one of my Halloween uploads last year, but I got a little busy and I just couldn't upload it in time. I was thinking of keeping it for another Halloween upload this year, but that's too far away. Plus, this is a pretty niche game, so there wasn't a whole lot to talk about, but I still figured there were some cool things to show you guys, so I figured why not. Anyways, if you have a suggestion for the next What Was Cut episode, please feel free to comment down below. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.